Welcome everybody to this webinar. Learning is a changing game, best devices for best results. My name is Steve Bezic. I'm the Business Development Director for Surface in Education across EMEA, and my role is to develop the Surface business at Microsoft across the geography in the education sector, across higher education schools. I've been doing this job for 4 years, and prior to that I ran the education business for Microsoft in the UK. The agenda today is as follows. First of all, a brief discussion on Microsoft in education and our strategy, university transformation trends and the impact of COVID, why the device is important, and finally, providing a case study to you of one of our biggest customers in the UK, a university that's really transforming using Surface technology. So the case for transformation. I think many of you know Microsoft and our CEO Satya Nadella and our mission statement to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And the way that translates into an education context is really to empower every student and teacher and every organization and school and college and university on the planet to achieve more. Achieving more is actually defined by yourself. What I mean by that is the outcomes that you're trying to drive using technology are defined by you. In some cases, it might be improved results. In some cases, it might be your students getting jobs, but that is defined by you. This next slide is about a transformation framework that we're using within the education sector in Microsoft to position our technology in this market. On the left-hand side, you can see the 4 areas of where all of our products live, if you like. So we categorize that into those 4 areas, and we have about $18 billion a year of R&D going into products, which can then be used by education organizations and universities. The 4 areas that we really look to impact is how do we use technology to empower teachers? How do we use technology to engage students to drive better learning outcomes? And really important, how do we use technology in a university to optimize the operation? Looking at all the processes within a university to drive efficiency, and then ultimately to transform learning using technology. And the way that would look in terms of, if you've got the cloud-based infrastructure in place, what will happen is you will drive a huge amount of data around students, around processes, around lots of different areas. And data will be at the heart of that transformation. And how do you use that data within the university? First of all, you've got to capture it across all the different business areas that you have and all the different faculties. That will then drive insight in the context of how do you drive that intelligence to then drive action and improve student and institutional outcomes by using that data. The world we live in is changing massively for our students and for your students around the world. If you look at how students and people just living as consumers, how they used to spend their time is pretty much like this. They did set working patterns, set times of the day to do certain things. We know now that that isn't the case. And the reality is this is how we use our time in the context of lots of different things going on at lots of different times. I, for one, in Microsoft, sometimes during the day, I maybe go on to book a holiday. Is that okay from a Microsoft point of view? Well, yes, I can do it as long as I don't spend too much time. But we have all these moments all the time in our lives. And from a student point of view, there's lots of things going on in their lives. And they need devices that are going to be able to do all the things that they want to do, as well as do all the learning as well. And learning can happen at any time and any place. And to that end, it could be at home. They just they're watching a film and they go on to look at what results they got, whatever. But there's lots of moments going on as people live their lives today. Now, this next slide is not education specific, and I've made it relevant because I think it's important for universities to understand that the place of work that your students are going to go to is very much changing. This analysis was done pre-COVID, but clearly, while we've got COVID going on, this is even more exaggerated. What's important for people in terms of how do the working environment, how is space utilized, how is technology utilized, where does work happen, and what is the culture of an organization for that work to happen, to enable people to work anytime and anywhere. And what we've shown through these results is that engagement of employees is really important to drive profitability. Being able to access work from anywhere is vitally important. And being creative is going to be a new skill that's required for lots of different jobs across the world. Okay, so my point here is the challenge is for the university to say, what are we doing to help our students get the skills for this changing work environment that they're going to be graduating into when they get their jobs? And that modern work requires modern devices. We're seeing more and more people looking at the Surface device to complement the cloud infrastructure that they have. And surveys that we've shown is that, technology is a great way of attracting and retaining talent. And maybe in a university that's the same as well, by providing the very latest technology to researchers, to academics. It's the best way of retaining and attracting talent to your university, and to embrace those different work styles of mobility. And as I say, to be creative and to inspire. We do a lot of work with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a Microsoft company that we acquired several years ago. And the data that is shown there is that, when you look at graduates who are 30 in the workplace today, there's only a very small number of graduates who are working at 30 that relates to anything they did in terms of their subject at university. I'm not saying the subject isn't important, it's really important, but what I'm challenging you is to say how you teach physics, chemistry, geography is really important to provide the skills that those students need in order to get the jobs and be successful, because the skills of creativity, collaboration, problem solving transcend every job that student will do in their lifetime. So why is the device important? Certainly cost is an important part of that. And I'm going to go through several points here about why the device is important in your choice. This is a picture of the Microsoft campus that I work. I haven't been there for many months, but it's 20 minutes down the road, based in Reading in the UK. You can see here there are 5 big buildings. They were started to be built 20 years ago and we've added to them. And you can see down the bottom where the car park is, there's areas ready for building 6. The reality is, though, our working practices in Microsoft, even pre-COVID, were such that we don't require that new building. And moreover, we actually don't need 2 of the buildings here. Even though the Microsoft UK subsidiary is growing massively, we don't need the space anymore. And whilst we are very different to a university, maybe I'm just painting a picture of the future in terms of what might be the case for learning even after COVID is finished. And the challenge for universities is to balance the premises that you have for teaching versus the offline capability to do teaching as well. And there's a huge cost in buildings, right? Many universities are spending millions on expanding their campuses. But as we look at the future, will that actually be required? And if you get the right technology at the right time, can you save money here by not building as many buildings into the future? Certainly from Microsoft's standpoint, we are. And again, I want to emphasize Microsoft is not a university. Our practices are very different. But I just want to show you an example within Microsoft, if you like, of how we're saving money and how we have a culture of working anywhere for this to move forward. The other challenge I've got on cost is what's in your bag. Okay, so this is a briefcase, could be a satchel, a handbag, any bag you've got. What's in it from a tech point of view? How is it managed and how is it protected? Most people I find in universities, schools in the UK certainly probably have two phones, one for home, one for work. They probably have a tablet, they probably have an aging laptop device, some pen and paper, loads of papers and some cables. What is the cost of all of that? Okay, when you look at it, what is the cost, the inherent cost of the security of that? What happens if there's a security breach around that kind of infrastructure? What we say at Microsoft is that really from a cost point of view, you just need a Surface device with a phone. Could be any phone attached to a network, either via the phone or via Wi-Fi, and that's really all people need. There's an example in the UK where we have a professor who had 6 devices. He had a desktop, a tablet, and a laptop for teaching and learning, and he had a mirror image for research. And what he's done now, he's changed that to one device, a Surface device. So there's a huge cost saving by moving to that kind of environment from where he was before. And we have studies that you can get access to about the economic impact. This is primary and secondary education, but it's as applicable to the university environment as well. So that's cost. The second one is learning outcomes. This model I've got in front of you is a well-known model in the industry about the teaching, how do you embed technology, and really how do you drive modification and redefinition of curriculum as opposed to just substituting and augmenting existing practices. And we've done a lot of work on this with an organisation in Australia where they've really shown that the Surface device in combination with the cloud infrastructure of 365 can drive that redefinition, providing richer feedback, providing better class discussion. And importantly within that is the Surface Pen. And why is the Surface Pen and specifically digital inking important? We can see that here with the research that has been done to show that writing is really, really important. But writing on paper now is very hard. It's sort of from a sustainability point of view, obviously uses a lot of trees that are out there that we don't want to cut down anymore. So in this digital world, the digital inking technology is vital, we think, to driving those learning outcomes. And many of our customers and teachers now using the pen to mark, using the pen to provide richer experiences with touch technology and voice to provide that feedback. But I think the important point here is that the writing things down is really important to drive those learning outcomes. And with Surface, clearly, we believe we have great inking technology to drive and improve those learning outcomes. There is lots of third-party research, and I'll point you towards how you can get access to these at the end of the webinar. But essentially, the top one is again an Australian university that's done research about pen-enabled student outcomes and looking at cohorts that used a digital pen and those that didn't. And how does that drive the learning outcome with very positive results in the STEM subjects that were done? And obviously, we've done other research as well about digital inking in the classroom and why that's important. So another reason why the device is important in your decision making is around security and management of the devices. Just looking at this one slide, you can see security is a huge issue for many organizations, not least universities around the world. And this combination of Office 365 and Microsoft 365 with Surface has enabled reductions in security breaches and cost savings around security issues. This is not specific to universities, but I think this is as applicable to universities in the context of some of the problems that we're seeing with ransomware attacks. And, if you think of the online world that we're all in at the moment, if there are security breaches, the whole business now of the university comes down. And to that end, we think that security is a really important part of your decision-making process, and to look at the inherent security within Windows, within Surface itself, using Surface Enterprise Management Mode, where you can enable and disable camera technology remotely. You can do that with USBs as well. These are really rich features that Surface offer as part of our security message for our university customers. And the other thing is around management and rolling out these devices. So with Intune and Autopilot, we have technology there which we can reduce the cost of deploying technology massively. And to that end, we've got examples where universities and schools, rather than imaging the device themselves, they take the Surface device, they give it to the teacher, the student takes it out of the box, they put it onto the Wi-Fi, type in some numbers from a security point of view, and it takes 6 minutes to build the requirement on that device specifically for that teacher or that student. It's a new way of managing and deploying technology. And at Surface, what we do when we're factory building these devices, we make sure they're completely clean to enable the Autopilot and the Intune to work seamlessly as part of the rollout process. The other one is integration. You've got to look at a device when, looking at how it integrates with the infrastructure that you've got. And as many people know, we have kind of lots of cloud technology segmented into M365, Dynamics, Azure. And in an education context, we see a lot of universities now looking at Azure, looking at Dynamics in lots of different ways. And you can see here we have Surface at the center of all of those three cloud technologies to drive that work. We have lots of universities in the UK driving Dynamics for student lifecycle management. How do you attract students in? How do you manage student satisfaction while they're at the university, and using Dynamics technology to do that? Clearly, a lot of universities now looking at Azure in terms of Azure is part of that Autopilot technology that I spoke about before. Windows Virtual Desktop is another technology from Azure that is becoming very interesting for many universities around the world today. And then obviously with M365, we're talking about Teams, we're talking about forms, Power Apps, workflows, etc., that people can use. And clearly this is a very, very rich environment. And we feel that the integration of those three cloud technologies into that one device with all the other messages that I've spoken about is really important to drive the productivity of the individual and to drive the learning outcomes for the student as well. The final one is sustainability, and we think this is really important. So sustainability is important to Microsoft. We think it's important on a worldwide basis, and we think it should be part of your decision-making process for looking at devices and the carbon footprint. And the carbon footprint of many devices, has to be looked at both from a manufacturing point of view, packaging, and obviously ongoing costs. And if you look at our sustainability goals at Microsoft, we're looking to be carbon neutral now, and we are now, and looking to be carbon negative by 2030. And Surface and the way that we manufacture and design goals and the way that we can reduce hazardous substances, the way that we can change our packaging, extending the life. You can see it here. We have a sustainability report specifically around Surface. And what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of the carbon footprint of a device is actually in the manufacturing. So when you look at devices, please look at, how sustainable they are. What is the sustainability message from anybody that's providing devices to you? But specifically Surface, we take this really seriously. And I'll put there'll be links to get to these resources at the end. But essentially, sustainability report is something I think you should look at And it should be part of your goals when you're looking at devices to procure for your university. So the University of Central Lancashire is the example that I'm going to use now in terms of somebody who's looked at, the transformation framework, somebody who's taking into account a lot of the messages that I've put to you already in the context of transformation in the university. So I think what's interesting here is this is a slide from the university itself, and this is from a presentation they did 6 years ago when they were deciding about what devices they wanted. And their goal was to replace the desktop environment in the university. Okay, so that's what their goal was. And they looked at the Surface line at that time, and they put lots of requirements that you can see on this slide. And they found that the Surface Pro 3 at the time, all those years ago, was the only device that gave them all of this and the potential capability to replace all of their desktop environment at the university as well. So if you look some of the detail of that university, they have 35,000 students and 4,000 academic staff and admin staff at the university. They standardized on Pro 3 all those years ago. Clearly, they've moved forward with that now, but now have 3,200 Surface devices in place. And I was speaking to the customer yesterday, actually, and he retired his own Pro 3 last year. So he got 5-6 years out of that one device, which was incredible in the context of the way we see devices today. And sometimes people say 3 years. We'd like to think at Microsoft with a Surface, you can get a lot more out of it than just the 3 or 4 years. But it was interesting for the customer to comment that he kind of retired his Surface Pro 3, which was about 5-6 years old. So they have a lot of Surface devices in place now. Every academic staff and every person at the university has now access to a Surface device. What's been interesting, though, is that there's no increase in their IT budget. So all they've done is replaced what they were doing in buying very expensive desktops with very expensive hardware maintenance, and they've just replaced those with Surface devices. And so what they're very proud of, and actually the message we're very proud of at Microsoft, is that there's been no increase in their IT spend in terms of making that transition because of the cost savings that can be made elsewhere. And importantly, what are the outcomes that they've driven? Well, they've shown that over that period, they've increased the student satisfaction within the university. The number of people going to the university has increased, and in the UK, it's very competitive in terms of which university is chosen by individual students. So that's a good outcome as well. They've measured the academic teacher satisfaction, and that's increased in terms of the way they view technology. And the reason for that, the main reason they put on the survey, is because wherever they go with their Surface device for teaching, the environment they go into, whether that's a lecture hall, whether that's a seminar room, everything's the same. They don't have to do anything different. They do the same in every room. They dock, they project, and they drive the teaching and learning that they do. Whereas before it was all very changeable in terms of the technology in each room was different. They had to learn lots of different things. So the academic and teacher satisfaction is important. And over this period as well, the results of this university have improved. So I think that's very compelling in terms of a journey of a university in the UK that's driven a lot of transformation that is driving those learning outcomes that I mentioned. I just specifically also now want to mention Surface Hub. Surface Hub is our big screen technology. It's proving very popular at the moment, specifically around COVID. And people are looking at this as, how do we drive distance learning? How do we use technology to do that? And many universities around Europe are also looking at it in terms of as a solution for audio-visual as well within a university. The work that I've done over the last few years has shown that many universities have AV solutions, and many universities are now adopting Microsoft 365 with Teams. And essentially, those two pieces of technology at the moment haven't really talked to each other. It's quite clunky, maybe, in terms of going into a room and then getting access to your team's environment. And so people are now looking at Microsoft technology in the context of how can we bring those two things together, where we have a seamless audiovisual experience for people, for academic people going around and, attaching to the device, presenting and carrying on with their teaching and learning. Teams integration is vital, right? That's the key thing here, and the value proposition around Surface, inking technology, Microsoft 365 with Teams. And I've put here a link of one of our customers in Australia, actually, who uses technology a lot, and specifically Surface Hub and Surface devices, to drive huge change in terms of the way that he teaches during COVID. And hopefully you can click on this link when you see it and get access to Dr. Kellerman, who's very compelling when he talks about how he's transforming his learning. This is the Surface portfolio. I'm not going to go into detail. There's a couple of messages from this slide. One is Microsoft is fundamentally committed to this platform, this hardware Surface platform. Huge amounts of R&D going on in this area to look at how do we integrate and innovate with a device with Microsoft 365, Windows, Azure, all those technologies. So massively committed to the platform. And the second message here is you have huge choice now. As a university, you can buy big, small, powerful, you've got lots of different price points to choose from. And so people are now looking to standardize on Surface because of the choice that you've got now compared with when we first started with Surface in 2012, where we just had one product. So that's the key those are the key messages from this slide. This is the area where you can go and get some resources that I've mentioned already. This is a resource set where I've put together essentially looking at education and Surface together. So there's lots of places you can go to get information on the technology, the Surface Go, whether it's what processor it is, whatever. There's loads of places in Microsoft, but in this site we put together, it's putting together education-specific content and resources that I've already mentioned already, videos of what customers are doing. So hopefully you can look at that and come back and use that at a later date. So essentially, in summary, Microsoft and Surface will give you the best experience of our cloud-based Microsoft 365 environment. This presentation is about the device, but the device is very complementary to our cloud environment. And we can use that to unlock that creativity that I've mentioned already, building that teamwork to enable people to get jobs and build skill sets using technology to drive that. In order for them to be more employable with those kind of skill sets, making it as simple as possible. That example I've just given you around, the University of Central Lancashire, about how simple it is for those academics to carry on and drive their teaching and learning as opposed to just fiddling around with technology. And I can't emphasize the security message enough. It's hugely important in the context of making sure that you have an infrastructure that's really secure for you, the brand of your university, the ability then to drive learning online. The security message is so important. So hopefully that gives you a great idea of how Surface plays in the education and specifically the higher education market. And I want to thank you for listening to my presentation today. And hopefully we look forward to working with you in the future around Microsoft Surface. Thank you very much.